Hi. So in this short kind of video, I just want to look at a few small things, really two of them, and one of them is just the particle system in Unity. We're not going to take a great look at it, but just how we could use scripts to play the particle system, play particles, and audio. Just same thing. How we could use scripts to play our audio. Just a few different ways of doing that. And then finally, I just want to put the audio together along with just the basics of the canvas, which is how we make our UI. And we'll make a very, very, very simple main menu that we can have working. So let's start off with the particle system. To make a particle system in Unity, we just right click on the hierarchy, go down to effects, and there is a particle system. There's a few types of particle effects, game objects that they have, but we're looking at the particle system specifically. When you click on it, it adds a new game object, which contains a game object that has one special component, that is the particle system component. We default to this kind of particle that just spreads in a cone, kind of going upwards as glowing circles. And if we look to the right, there are a bunch of options here, and this is where we can control how our particle looks. Any of these options here, such as emission, shape, they can be clicked, which will open up the options for that specific module. And if the module is checked, that means we're using it. If the module is not checked, that means we're not using it. So I uncheck shape, you can see now things are just going straight. It's not using that cone shape. When I check it, it's not using that cone shape. The shape module has a bunch of options in it that we can change. So if I change to sphere, now things are spawning in a sphere. Let's just go back to the cone shape for now. And just like that, there are a bunch of options you guys can play with. There's also a renderer option. This is where you can change the material. So by default, they use this particles unlit material, which is just this kind of white to black gradient of a circle. You can bring in any texture you want, and you could like replace that here under the material. You could also, under the render mode, change it from billboard, and we can render meshes if we want. So now we're rendering this texture onto a cube rather than just a plane. And you can change it to anything that you want. Let me just go back to billboard. I'm not going to do a super in-depth tutorial on the particle system. Ideally, you'll be finding particles on the asset store, or if you just look up a tutorial to make a specific kind of particle in Unity, they will show you all the options you need to set here in order to get it to look like that. If you wanted a smoke effect or a fire effect, well, there's tutorials for that that will do a much better job teaching it than I can. What I'm more interested in is we have this particle effect, and we want to be able to use it in our scripting. So that means we want to be able to stop it, we want to be able to play it, and sometimes we want to be able to play it and then destroy it when it's done. You know, this might be like a one-shot effect, like an explosion or something. You don't want it to just keep repeating. We just want to play it and then destroy it. So just to test this, I'm going to make a small script, and I will call it Hello Particles. And let's just take a quick look at how we could use this in script. So this script is going to be attached to the object that the particles are attached to, the same game object. So it is going to need a reference to the particle system. I'll call it PS just to keep it short. And then on start, we want to set PS equals to get component the particle system. And I'm just going to make two functions just to show you guys how we can start and stop it. It's very easy. So I'll make a void stop particle, and I will make a void start particle. So real quick, if we were to look, if I was to play this and we were just to look at the particle effect, we'll see that by default, it's going to be playing. So you can see I'm in the game, and by default, my particle effect is playing. So what I'm going to do is just have it stop playing when we start the game, and then start playing like a little while after. So to get our particle to stop playing, we can use ps.stop. That's a function called stop that just stops it from playing. And I will put that here as well. Instead of calling it from start, what I can do is call the stop particle function. So stop particle. If we wanted it to play again, we can use ps.play. And now just a small thing, if I was to do stop particle and then do play particle again, or I'd call it start particle. If I was to do this, what's going to happen is this is going to run stop and then run start immediately. We're not going to get to see the little, we're not going to get to see it stopping and then starting again. So instead of just starting the particle directly, we can use a special function that mono behaviors have called invoke. And what invoke does, it just runs a function. But if we can read the signature up here, it takes a method name, that's the function's name, and it takes a time. So it'll delay a certain amount of time, and then it'll run the function. So I could write start particle, that's the function I want to run, make sure it's spelled the exact same, comma, how much ever delay I want. I'll give it a 5-second delay. So now on start, we're going to stop playing the particle, and then after 5 seconds, it's going to call the start particle, which should play the particle. And let's take a look at that working. I have forgot to attach the script, so let's do that first. I'm going to add a component and call it hello particles. Okay, let's try that again. It has stopped because we started playing, and after around 5 seconds, that particle starts up. And it's as simple as that. We can just use that to kind of start and stop playing particles. The other big way you can play particles is if we take this particle system, we make it a prefab, and then when we learned about instantiation, well, you can instantiate this particle system as an object. So if you imagine, if you wanted something like footsteps, to have particle effects, well, on every footstep, we would just instantiate this particle object. And we'll take a look at, not with particles, but with sounds, how we can do it on every footstep. But that's the same way you do it with particles. You just instantiate it. And then once the particle reaches its endpoint, you could delete it. And to delete it, we have a function here called destroy. And destroy takes in a game object as well as a delay. So we could destroy this game object. And what is the delay we want to give it? Well, we could use the particle system dot total time. So this would destroy the game object once the total time of the particle, however long that effect is, it'll just destroy it right after that. Okay, so it's been a very simple look at particle systems. Really, I just wanted to note how we could play it, pause it, and kind of the logics we could use to like run particles. You could either just use particle system.play and stop, or you could save it as a prefab and instantiate it, and then just have it destroy once its total time has finished running. And this is useful, again, for things like explosions, footsteps, those one-shot particle effects. Okay, next let us take a look at sounds. We'll start with the easiest type of sound that's going to enhance any kind of game, especially a platformer or kind of arcade game, which is music. So I have a bunch of sounds that I've imported into my project. I have music, a hover sound, a click sound, and then a few walking, just kind of Foley effects. Let's just start with the music. It is as simple as dragging the music onto the scene. It will make a game object with the same title as the audio clip. And let's take a look at this game object. It has a transform, and it has an audio source. In Unity, audio is played, an audio clip is played through an audio source. So you can see this audio source has an audio resource. This is what we call an audio clip. If I was to click this, you'll see all my audio clips. Those are the .wav files that I've imported, or MP3 files, whichever, whatever extension. These are the sound files. That's what we call audio clips. Audio clips attached to an audio source that plays the audio. To actually hear the audio, there's another component called an audio listener. Our main camera has this audio listener attached to it. We only need one, and our main camera comes with it by default, so we can just leave it there. So just taking a look at some of the settings, we have play on awake. This is going to play the music track when the game starts. We have loop, it's music, so we do want it looping. And then finally, we have all these attenuation settings, these 3D sound settings. How far should the sound carry? When should it start dropping off in volume, etc. If you can think of like ambient noises, something like a fireplace crackling, you want that fireplace to crackle only, when you're close to the fireplace. And as you go away from it, the audio's kind of got to like fall off. And that is what this chart here shows us. It's just how far we are away from the audio source, how loud it's going to be. But to actually get this 3D sound working, we need to set the spatial blend. So you can see spatial blend goes from 2D to 3D. That just tells us how 2D we want it. If it's 2D, that means we can hear it equally everywhere. If it's 3D, it starts actually working with the 3D spatial blend settings. Music does not need to be 3D. There's not like one source that this music is coming from. It's just going to play throughout my game. So I can leave the spatial blend at 2D. And that's as simple as it is to set up music. We just hit play and we'll start hearing our music playing. So that was music. Music's fairly easy to get working. All we do is drag it on the level, just make sure it loops, because that's the kind of music I have, is just looping music. Next, let's do something slightly more complicated, and that is going to be the footstep sound effects. Again, I have a bunch of walk sound effects here. Let's get that working with our footsteps. So what I want to do, if I was just think about it, is every time my character's animation, the foot hits the ground, I want it to pick from one of these 7 walking sounds and then just play it. It's going to pick randomly, it's going to play. This will just give us a little bit of variation in our footsteps so they don't sound, the same every step. I got 7 of them, and it should be able to like pick them randomly so our footsteps sound more natural. So there's really 2 parts to this. One is making a function that will take these 7 footsteps and give us one back randomly. And the other is in our animation itself, triggering this function when our player's foot hits the ground. So if I was going to click on my player character, not the player game object, but the game object that has the animator, and I open my animation tab, so window, animation, you'll see that I have a list of all the animations my character has. So for example, I have walk forward, and if I start scrubbing through it, it's previewing it, and every time the foot hits the ground, like here, I wanted to play the sound effect, and then here, I wanted to play the sound effect, and then things just loop. So we can't edit this animation right now because it's a read only, and so we need a way to make it editable. The easiest way to do this is to go back into our animations. So these are all my animations. We're going to hit the little bubble to open up the parts of the animation. You can see there's the animation. It's the little triangle with the dashes. It says walk forward. I'm just going to hit Control D to duplicate it. And I'll rename this one walk forward _ sound effects just to not confuse myself with the original one. And let me just do that with the left strafe and right strafe as well. Left walk SFX and right walk .sfx. Again, I'm hitting Control D as in duplicate. Now these duplicated animations are not going to be read-only. We can edit them. So I'm going to go back into my character, open up the animator, and I know everything is in this locomotion walk right now. I'm just going to change walk forward to walk forward sound effects. Walk backwards is going to be walk forward sound effects. Walk left is going to be the sound effects version, and same thing for walk right. Now, if I go back, click on Remy, go into my animation, you'll see that everything is still read-only except the ones we just changed, the ones that we duplicated. So walk forward, it doesn't say read-only anymore. And now I can scrub through where I want that sound effect to happen. I can right-click and I can add an animation event. What this event does, it's symbolized by this little mark here, is it'll run any function that we have selected. It says function, no function selected. We can tell it to run any function, and every time the playhead gets over this frame, that function's going to run. So before we continue prepping the rest of it, let's just create that function. So I'm going to go back to my scripts, and I'm going to make a new script just for this. When you guys are working on your sound effects, if you're going to have a lot of different sound effects, again, your character is going to be walking, sprinting, jumping, dashing, and you're going to have sound effects for all of those. Make one script, to kind of handle all the sounds of our character. In this case, I'm only showing you footstep sounds, so I'm just going to call this footstep sound controller. But really, you'll be making an overall sound controller for your character. So the footstep sound controller is going to need two things really, right? It's going to need that audio source, which is how we play audio. We need an audio source that holds the clips. I'm going to call that source. And I am going to need a list of those footstep sounds. So audio clip, it's going to be an array, and I'll call it footsteps. On start, I just want to set source equal to get component audio source. We don't need an update function. Instead, I'm going to make a public function and call it play footstep. So all we want is we want to pick a random item from that array. So we'll have an integer for that. I'll call it random. And it's going to be random.range, which takes a minimum and a maximum. The first item in the array is a 0, and the last item is going to be the length of it. So I'll do footsteps.length. We need to set the audio we'll make an audio clip because we need to actually get that from the array. So we're going to make an audio clip called clip, and it's just going to be the footstep of whichever random value we've selected. So of random. So we're just getting whatever this number is going to be. We're just getting that element from our footsteps array and creating a new clip, an audio clip called clip. And finally, we just want to set our audio source to play one shot, the clip. And what this will do is it'll set the audio source's clip to whatever audio clip we provided it, and it'll play it once. Let's go set this up. So under Remy, we need to now add an audio source and our footstep sound effect script. So I called it footstep sound controller. This is going to have one thing we need to fill out, which are these footsteps. So I am just going to add, I'm just going to type out 7 here. Oops, I did 78. Just 7 elements to this array. And I'm just going to drag in these audio clips one by one. Finally, back in animation, make sure Remy's selected. Let's select walk forward. Now, when I'm here, I can click the no function selected, or we see our footsteps controller, and we have play footsteps. We got to make sure to make that function public, and we'll see it here. So same thing, when this other footstep hits the ground, I'm going to add another animation event and do the same thing. Now I just need to make sure to do it for my walk right and my walk left. I've just gone ahead and done it. So my walk left has it, my walk right has it. And now when we play the game, I do believe my footstep sound effects are a little loud, so we might hear them a little too much, but they're pretty loud. But you can tell every time my character steps on the ground, that footstep sound effect plays. Hopefully you guys find some footsteps that are a little better than what I had found. I think these are pretty awful, but they're good at illustrating the point. They're a little too loud, but still. And so just like that, again, we could go and we could add jump sound effects. So just when our character jumps, we can add that sound effect in. We could add a sound effect for when they're dashing. You know, as soon as it plays, we could add a sound effect there. And this way we can add sound effects to everything. Even they're sprinting, we can add sound effects. And then let's just move on to the last little part of this, which is making a tiny main menu using the UI or the canvas and UI components that Unity has. So I'm going to consider this level currently. So if I go into my scenes, I have this sample scene. I'm just going to call it main level. So this is my main level, and I want to make a new level that's going to be my main menu. Hit Control N, and I'm just going to make a new basic level. I'm going to have to save this level. So under scenes, I'm going to save this as main menu. Now, to make any kind of UI in Unity, we need something called a canvas, and we can add that by right-clicking, UI, and you can add a canvas. You could actually add any of these items and it'll automatically add a canvas, but let's just add a canvas to start. Our canvas comes, or when we add this canvas for the first time, we see it there. It kind of takes up the entirety of this like large rectangle here. Our canvas by default operates in something called screen space. So world space is this like 3D area we have here, you know, and we've been setting up our levels, placing all your assets. It's all been done in world space. Screen space, think about it more like our flat 2D screen. That is our screen space. And our UI exists on this screen space. And before we take a look at that, let's just talk about this other thing that's added called the event system. So this is very similar to our, our input events that we had done. It's very similar to that, except this is auto-added, and this specifically has to do with UI navigation. So you can see there's a bunch of like inputs here, UI point, click, middle click, right click, and these are all by default bound to our mouse. You can see there's an action asset here called default input actions. If I open it up, here's all those UI options, right? So this is just like we had set it up. This is my player action map. This is the default UI one. You can see things like submit, and point, which is the mouse's position. There's right click, middle click, there's click, which is just left click. So it's just by default giving us all this mouse options kind of here. And the nice thing about Unity having this input system is by default, it has controls for your controller. It has controls for your, even like VR controls. It has controls for our mouse. And, it just kind of like helps us build our UI without worrying about the input method of it and like work across different systems. So let's just take a look at what I meant by that screen space. You can see the render mode is currently screen space overlay. If I was to go right click on my canvas and just add a text item here. So I'm going to add text. Let's just move it down a little bit, or let this be the title of my game. So I'm going to make the font size much bigger. And my game is going to be called Game, the Game. I'm just going to move it up here somewhere. Now you'll see that if I click on my main camera is down here. It technically cannot see, the canvas, but the canvas doesn't render directly to the camera. It renders to our screen. What that means, when I click Game here, you can see it is just rendering on kind of like the top right, which if I go back to my scene, that is exactly where I'm rendering it on this rectangle. So this rectangle here, this kind of maps to our physical screen that we see, our 2D screen. And that's how the UI by default exists, which is this screen space overlay. You can have UI that is in world space. If you click on this render mode, there's world space. And if we click that, now you can move, scale, rotate your UI around. You'll see if I hit game, I don't see it there anymore. And that's because my camera is not physically looking at it. If it was kind of, we'll see. It starts to render just like anything else within 3D space. But for a main menu, I don't need a world space. I'm just going to go back to screen space overlay, and you can see there it is. To this, I'm going to need to add two more things. I'm going to need to add 2 buttons for the type of game I want, or the type of menu I want, sorry. So I'm going to go to UI. There's a lot of different options here worth playing with them, but I just want to add a button. I'm just going to move this button where I wanted to, and I'm going to add another one. It's always good to name these objects so that you don't get confused with what they are. I like to prefix the name with like what type of object this is. This is a button, so I'll prefix it with btn underscore. One of them is going to be start, and the other is going to be btn underscore quit. So one button to start, one button to quit. These buttons, if I was to open them up, come with some text underneath. So we can name them start, and we could name the other one quit. So what I want is when my button is hovered over, I want it to play a hover noise that I have. And then when we click on it, I want them to, respectively start the game or quit the game. So we'll start with the hover sound. What we are going to do first is make a new script. So let me go back all the way to my scripts, and let's make a new script, and I'll call it main menu controller, and this is going to control everything about our main menu. So to play the audios, I'm going to need that audio source. And I'm also going to need those audio clips. So I'm going to have a audio clip for hover. I'll just call it hover clip. And I'm going to need an audio clip called click clip. On start, we just need to set our source. And we're going to have some functions here. So I'm going to have a public void play hover sound. I'm going to have a public void I'm just going to call it play. This is going to be to play our game. And we need one to quit the game. Okay, so play hover sound, all it's going to do is going to take our source, and it's going to play one shot the hover clip. Void play, we'll take a look at that in just a second. But I do want to take our source, play one shot, and I want to play the click clip. Same thing with quit. I want to play one shot, the click clip. And with quit, I also want to just quit the game. So we can call application.quit. Let's just take a look at play real quick. So when it comes to playing, I'm going to go to File and then go to Build Profiles. Let's just dock this here. You can see in Build Profiles, first of all, we have all the platforms we can build for. If your platforms are nice and like a bold white color, that means these are available. Everything that's grayed out is not available. So my Unity, I've currently installed the Windows build, to build Windows applications, Android applications, and web applications. So, and it tells us in green what's active, which in this case is Windows. What we're interested in now is in this scene list here, I have a scene that says main level. So when Unity created our game, you probably were also using that sample scene it just came with. Well, it's just going to add that by default to our scene list because it was the only scene we had. Let's open the scene list. And I want to add my current scene, which I can do by clicking on this Add Open Scenes. And you'll see it added main menu. I'm just going to click and drag main menu to the top. So it's main menu above main level. When we build an exe, so when we make an executable and run it, whatever scene is on top of this list will be the first scene to run. So in this case, and really a lot of cases, you want that main menu screen to be the first screen that runs. Or if you have like a splash screen for your game, well, that's going to be the scene that runs, right? So in my case, it's my main menu scene that's running first. And you'll see on the rightmost side, there's a number. This is the index of that scene. The scene list is just an array. And this is the index of it. So our main menu is the 0th index because it's the first element. Our main level is the second element, so it has an index of 1. When we switch scenes, we gotta tell it which index we want to switch to. In this case, 1. So I'm going to go back to my script. And the scenes are managed by a special class called a scene manager. So we can just get a reference scene manager. It has a function called load scene, and we just tell it the index that we want to load. We could also pass in the string of the scene name, but in this case, the index is just a little easier to use, so I know that index is 1. Next, to the canvas, I'm just going to add this main menu controller, and I'm also going to add an audio source. And we got to set these 2 audio clips. So in my case, hover has hover go over it, and click has click go over it. If I click on these buttons, and we scroll down to the button component, you'll see that there's an on-click event. This is when I press the mouse button on it. So, well, on-click on start, I'm going to add a function to it, drag my canvas over here because my canvas has a reference to my main menu controller script, or, well, it has that as a component. And we can select main menu controller, and I want the start to run the play function. I want my quit. Same thing, gonna add an event, drag in the canvas component, and I want quit to run the quit function. The last little bit we need to set up is just the actual hover. So you'll see that our button only has a click event, no hover event. So to the button, we're gonna add a component. It's gonna be called an event trigger. And here we can add many different types of events. If I click add new event, you'll see these are a bunch of UI-based events that exist that kind of correspond to the events that are here. So I am going to add a new event type on pointer enter. This is when our mouse pointer enters the object. And here I want to call that canvases main menu controller play hover sun. I want to do the exact same thing with the quit. So I'm just going to copy the component and paste it and paste the component. Now if I was to run all this, when I hover over my buttons, it plays a noise. And if I hit quit, it should quit the game. And if I hit start, it should start the game. Okay, something didn't work there. Let's just check out real quick what was wrong. Okay, honestly not sure what happened. I think it's a case of I forgot to hit save. Quit doesn't do anything here, but if you made an exe, that'll work. But if I hit start, you can see it just loads my main level up. And, you know, we can start playing our game. Anyway, that's been a real short video. We covered a lot of little things here. Just a quick main menu, kind of like a glimpse into the UI. A quick glimpse into audio and a few ways we could use them. And also just a very, very basic intro into the particle system. Really, again, just ways we can trigger it using code. Thank you guys for watching.